October 15th, 1887. There's a game going on between Preston North End and a tiny club out of Manchester named Hyde. It's the opening round of the FA Cup, and there is very little that's similar between these two clubs. Hyde is a newly formed group that started in 1885 and was playing in its first FA Cup tournament. Preston North End, on the other hand, was elite. They had made the semi-finals the year before, a season which featured a club from Scotland playing that year as well, but that's another story. And they were big favorites to win it all that year. They had been playing association football since 1880, originally starting with cricket in 1863. They were also one of the first clubs to professionalize, and played a big part in the Football Association allowing players to get paid by threatening to leave and forming their own group, but with blackjack and hookers. The FA ultimately conceded, much to the dismay of South Englanders who could afford to play for free, and much to the joy of North England clubs, who could now legally pay the players that were demanding it, as most of the players winning wages were factory workers. And take advantage of professionalism they did, bringing in players from other nations to play for them, most notably Scotland. Scottish players were really good at football, and wanted to get paid to play it, as Scotland's Football Association at the time was still amateur only. So the players would make the journey down south to play for northern clubs. Now, this version of the FA Cup is probably the closest you will ever see at its most egalitarian. Every team that was in the association qualified, and had a more equal opportunity to potentially win, as nearly every club had to start in the first round, excluding the few who got byes. For those who had talented players, these opening rounds were basically gimmies consisting of double-digit victories. But unlike those games, this one is remembered. This particular game is still the most one-sided FA Cup match in history. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I just wanted to see a video about how the English football pyramid was formed and works, and you spent the first few minutes talking about a blowout between two worthless clubs. What gives? Well, it's simple. In one absolute thrashing was Hyde's entire season. I'm not joking. Football schedules at the time were a cluster of chaotically coordinated combinations of competitions, usually consisting of the FA Cup, a county tournament or two, and that's about it. The rest of the games played were exhibitions scheduled by teams needing to fill spots left empty due to being eliminated. And these games had no value, outside of generating some ticket sales and keeping players paid and fit. For example, Hyde finished their season against a small club that no one today knows about called Newton Heath. Press at the time dubbed it the unofficial championship of Manchester, because once again, the game didn't matter. Whenever I think of football, I normally think of London, Manchester, maybe that small Scottish town up north called Glasgow. I don't think of Birmingham. Even more specifically, I don't think of Aston Villa, which was formed by members of Villa Cross Wesleyan Chapel in 1874. A few years later, in 1877, they appointed as vice president a draper named William McGregor. McGregor got his first eye on football watching a game back in his native Scotland when he was younger, and while in Birmingham, he would close his shop early to go and watch games. And Aston Villa had some success during his tenure, winning county cup tournaments and putting on good performances in the FA Cup, including a championship in 1887, the season before Preston's smashing of Hyde. By this time, he was appointed president, and had gained a lot of influence in the football world. Managing the business side of a football team today sounds absolutely nuts, but I get the feeling it was a lot tougher in the early days. In order to keep everyone paid and happy, you gotta schedule games, and relying on those friendly exhibitions was not the way to go about it. These matches, just on the basis of hierarchy, are gonna be super low in the totem pole in importance, no matter what. And because of this, it allowed for a lot of these games to be cancelled, whether it was due to weather or because teams made a surprise run in the tourney. There was also no need to field a strong squad either. This would obviously affect ticket sales, and would make the strength of your competition volatile. And the crowds want to see good football, and the teams want to pay for the best players. Plus, the main revenue stream for these clubs was ticket sales, so it is no surprise that games that offered a better pay rate, specifically a cup tie, would always take precedent. While game cancellations seemed to be the norm, the tolerance levels of the current system more than likely were simmering over time. Discussions of a league, while I cannot confirm were going on before this, more than likely was. Across the pond in 1876, America was investing in their big middle finger to the British, baseball, and formed a closed league of big city clubs mainly in the Northeast. The murmurs of what was happening overseas were, at the least, a little bit influential to the future formation of the Football League, but these murmurs needed a moment to instigate action, a spark to light the match. So, what sparked it? 5 canceled matches in a row for Aston Villa. Now, what specific games were canceled, what the reason was, and who they were against, I cannot find any info on. Whether they were small clubs who got a chance to play a better team than Aston Villa, or maybe a club that had a cup tie that took priority, these consecutive cancellations were enough to motivate McGregor to change things. In reporting from the time, McGregor notes the volatility of cup ties and how they are the biggest reason for cancelled friendlies, but I'm pretty sure there were other reasons as well. Now, what exactly would those changes be? Well, the first one's obvious. A combination of teams playing a set schedule of games arranged throughout the season that would not interfere with cup ties and would allow for the near abolition of unreliable friendlies. The second, a league that would be seen as the best in the world. And that second part might sound like I'm exaggerating, but I'm not trying to. England, alongside Scotland, had the 2 best national programs for football, especially as some nations had not even started their own football associations. For example, France and Spain do not form theirs until around the 1890s. Some other nations, such as Ireland, formed around their own game called Gaelic football, a form of rebellion against the shy-talk English. Others simply followed and evolved the rules of a different version of football altogether, like for example college football in the US went through multiple variations of football that were at times based on soccer, rugby, and Oneida, they're known as Boston rules. Not to mention the rules of the game were formed in England, and obviously the best players are playing in England, so it makes sense that the best league would be there as well. But in order for this league to exist, there had to be teams who wanted to participate. So McGregor sent out a message to a select group of clubs that, upon examination, were big enough and influential enough to get the idea going. Those clubs were Bolton Wanderers, West Bromwich Albion, Blackburn Rovers, his own club Aston Villa, and finally, elite Preston North End. The letter went as follows. Every year it's becoming more and more difficult for football clubs of any standing to meet their friendly engagements and even arrange friendly matches. The consequence is that at the last moment, through cup tie interference, clubs are compelled to take on teams who will not attract the public. I beg to tender the following suggestion as a means of getting over the difficulty is that 10 or 12 of the most prominent clubs in England combine to arrange home-and-home fixtures each season. The said fixtures to be arranged at a friendly conference about the same time as the international conference. This combination might be known as the Association Football Union and could be managed by representatives from each club. Of course, this is in no way to interfere with the National Association. Even the suggested matches might be played under cup tie rules. However, this is a detail. My object in writing to you at present is merely to draw your attention to the subject, and to suggest a friendly conference to discuss the matter more fully. I would take it as a favor if you would kindly think the matter over, and make whatever suggestions you deem necessary. I am, yours very truly, William McGregor, Aston Villa FC. P.S. How would Friday, 23rd of March, 1888, suit for the friendly conference at Anderton's Hotel, London? The idea began to spread, and other clubs became interested, such as Wolverhampton, Derby County, Stoke, and Burnley. Other clubs like Nottingham Forest turned down the offer as they were still an amateur club, while the Wednesday FC in Sheffield turned it down over fears of retribution from the Football Association. Talk also began to enter the eyes of the commoner, as the reports of a combination forming were buzzing en passant, and sports writers were sharing their notes about this potential league in the write-ups. Okay, something that I did not know until about a few months before researching this story is that Britain was actually quite literate at the time. The passing of the Education Act in 1870 assisted in pushing literacy rates for both males and females to be above 96% by 1900, especially as they used to be as low as 54% in 1850. This strong literacy rate in turn created a new market, exponentially creating a large amount of books and newspapers in England. What's interesting is that the talk around this new league was filled with similar talk you would find online today. I found a report about a complaint made by a writer that this new league was only being done to pad the pockets of wealthy teams, which, I mean, duh. Guy's not wrong. Part of me wonders if they were a fan of a team that wouldn't get in and were just mad. I also found a note from one of the editors addressing readers who thought there was bias because their teams weren't getting as much talk in the papers. Nothing really changes, does it? What is also neat about Britain's massive rise in literacy is that the kind of stories people wanted to read were not typically highbrow. One noted example are the penny dreadfuls, cheaply made stories that focused on macabre acts and sometimes supernatural beings. You get characters like Varney the Vampire, who brings to life the many tropes that become associated with vampire novels, not to mention was an inspiration for Bram Stoker. Another penny dreadful is Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street, which was also the main hub for England's newspaper scene. Crazy enough, there was a Sweeney Todd's barbershop on Fleet Street, albeit it existed much, much later than when the books were written. There's this old photo from the early 1900s that reveals the outside of this tiny store in all its glory. Google Maps shows that it's occupied by another store now, although there seems to be a little poster up top that reminds people of the Demon Barber's former residence. But just 200 feet west of the supposed barbershop, there was the Anderton Hotel, which on March 23rd, 1888, held the first meeting about this new league. How do I know this? Well, like most things in London, there's a plaque that talks about how the Anderton once stood in this spot, albeit no mention that one of the biggest sports leagues in the world had its first meeting there. If you don't know where to look, you could easily miss it too, as the plaque is hiding in an alley, which also made it very difficult to see on Google Maps. This is also how I found out about Sweeney Todd's barbershop just being down the street. When you think about how many plaques there are in London, some that just tell you that a famous person stayed here, or personal favorite, one about Edith Garrett, a suffragette that knew jiu-jitsu, which is literally what her plaque says, by the way. Side note, her story is fascinating, and I wouldn't be able to do it justice. Somebody better notify Tor Parsons. Throughout all of this research, I was a bit shocked that there wasn't something that mentioned, oh, it was in this location where the Football League had its first meeting and began to take shape. Or something like that. Missed opportunity, I guess. Now it took another meeting to finalize everything, in Manchester, which has a plaque, by the way, right next to a Burger King. Now, the biggest thing out of all this was not that a league was formed. I personally think something like that was expected to happen sooner or later, but what we got is different from the closed league system that was being used in the United States. There were 12 teams, each one playing each other twice, but the teams that finish in the 4 lowest places are technically kicked out, and must be re-elected by their peers to play another season. Why? Well, I'm pretty sure that people could create a plethora of reasons that would sound like they were either generated by a chatbot or uttered by a PR team. You really can't tell the difference these days. Reasons like keeping hold of a competitive advantage, promoting only the teams that have earned their spot, etc. From what I could find, the real reason was money, and most notably, attendance. I cannot confirm that every team in the first few years of the league had the biggest draws as far as attendance goes, but you surely had to consider ticket sales when it came to electing teams. And we have such an example occurring in the second year of the league's existence. Stoke was not able to compete with the rest, placing last in the first 2 years of the league. They were re-elected just like every other team the first time around, but the second year they were voted off the island and replaced with Sunderland, who had almost double the attendance numbers as Stoke, according to European football statistics. Now, I would personally think that during this time there would have been some competing league, but the weird thing is that there really wasn't one. Now, there were attempts to create leagues of rejected teams, the first one being the Combination, but that folded after a few months. Now, some of those teams, undeterred from the failure, would go on to form the Football Alliance. And sure, you could look at this and say, well, there's your competition, but that doesn't accurately depict how the Alliance operated. Most of the clubs that they would take in were teams kicked out of the Football League, and winners of the Alliance were notorious for using their championship season to apply for election into the league. Never vice versa. Even Darwin, a mid-table team, applied for election and got enough votes, so even mid-tier Alliance clubs wanted to be a part of the Football League. Why? Because it was the best in the world. And the only way teams are leaving the best group is if they are forced to. And while teams willingly leaving is enough proof of a hierarchy for me, the Alliance itself really pushed for cooperation with the Football League, not actually making itself a competitive equal when it could have at least tried to. The only time I have ever heard of leagues trying to cooperate were in US Soccer, like, for example, MLS and USL used to have an agreement, and spring football in the United States, where the United Football League currently has a partnership with the NFL. This usually happens when one league is just far larger in status and money, which I don't really see as the case with the Football League. 1892 comes and the two leagues merge, but instead of just absorbing all of the alliance clubs, the league is split into two divisions. The best alliance teams join Division 1, creating a 16-team league, while the rest were placed in Division 2, and who would be promoted and relegated between them was determined by a test match. The league messed around with different types of promotion playoffs until one was so awful that they said, enough, automatic promotion relegation it is. And with it came one of the biggest issues the system has. Now, I know that what I'm about to say will probably not be taken seriously due to a variety of factors, some more valid than others, but hear me out. I find it extremely unfair that they decided to tier the two groups. Now, we Americans do have tiered league systems of promotion and relegation, or as I'm personally going to call it, a ladder system, whether it be for players such as in minor league baseball or for teams like the NCAA. While there isn't automatic promotion and relegation, at least for teams, there are also a bunch of other factors that have to play into a Division 2 team joining Division 1, or a player being called up from single A to double A. When researching why the Football League decided to go with this system, I had a hard time finding a definitive answer. To be honest, I still don't know the exact reason. Most of the time, there isn't much talk about the thought process, even in contemporary sources, but there is a lot of talk about what it has come to mean in more recent times. A lot of the discussion about promotion and relegation reads more like a justification rather than an explanation. Like as if people don't really have a good answer for its existence, but will blindly defend it to the death if you talk about its flaws in any way. As an American, I can immediately think of a lot of things that would get the same type of response here. Stuff like simping over celebrities, prop bets, the Electoral College, sports drafts, pineapple on pizza, or being a Lakers fan. In Boston, one of the common defenses of pro-rel is the talk about merit. In fact, if I prompt Google's AI or ChatGPT to provide a statement, the first reason I typically get is merit. The bullet points also talk about a competitive advantage that makes games later in the season matter because of relegation and promotion stakes, and the narrative opportunity for a small town club in the 4th or 5th tier to make it to the top flight. Now, later I will talk about why I think these points are not that strong to begin with, and read more like rose-tinted justifications rather than intended. But let's start with merit, or what it really is. The illusion of merit. The early years of this pyramid show this way more bluntly by having every team eligible for promotion and relegation face each other in a playoff, or as they called it, a test match. Teams in last place had a second chance, while Division 2 champs had another hurdle to overcome. Whoever won their match was going to play Division 1 ball the following season. Sure, this is another notch of drama to keep games interesting and sell tickets, but it also creates a glass ceiling, especially for teams who would win Division 2 outright and not advance, which actually happened in the system's first year. Smallheath, a club out of Birmingham, won the second division but lost their playoff game against the last place club out of Manchester that no one has heard of, called Newton Heath. Crazy to think that you could be the best team in Division 2 and have it mean nothing. And once automatic promotion and relegation is implemented, you would think that this glass ceiling would be shattered, right? No. First, you have the yo-yo problem, where you can be a club that is too good for Division 2 and nowhere close to compete in Division 1. Recent example of this is Norwich, who went from Division 2 to the Prem and back 4 consecutive years, literally placing first in the Championship and last in the Premier League each year during that run. The massive disparity between the two divisions reveals the second problem, which is right in the name. Second division. Do the best players want to play in Division 2? Do the sponsors want to invest money into the second best group? Are broadcasters really fighting tooth and nail to get the rights to show the second best league? And are fans really wanting to buy tickets to watch a silver medal game? The money will never be in Division 2, no matter how good your marketing team and how weird your league name is. So what you have are a group of teams that have to prove that they belong. And when they even get a chance to show that they deserve to be in the conversation, they still gotta overcome more, because the teams that are already there have it built to their advantage. Also speculation here, but I think that is the real reason. The league really wanted to cement the idea that they are the best in the world, right? These pissant teams we're adding cannot touch us, and to prove that they are somewhat decent, they need to overcome the obstacles we are putting in place. So what do? I mean, we want this to be a fair system, right? Well, I'll give my suggestion later, but the Football League responded by expanding. A third division comes into play in 1921, split into two groups, one north and one south. This grouping is then abolished in 1958 and is replaced with the fourth division. And that's the pyramid. For about 40 years. Automatic promotion and relegation between them, and then if you're one of the worst teams in the fourth division, you have to be re-elected to stay. Now, expanding the league into more divisions doesn't solve the glass ceiling problem. In fact, it makes it worse by creating more of them, as the quality of football will get worse the further down the pyramid. Plus, why do we call it a pyramid? Throughout this video, I've been using that language, but if you look at the league setup, it doesn't look like a pyramid. And that language is something that was not used to describe football's tier system at all until about the 1990s. Google actually notes that one of the earliest instances of the word quote-unquote football pyramid was supposedly in 1957. What specific document utters those words the first time? Don't know. Probably gonna be lost. But what I found interesting is that the usage of the pyramid to describe a tiered system more than likely older than that, and probably doesn't come from England, and probably didn't come from football. There's this old magazine called Commonweal. It is a Catholic journal based out of New York, and in volume 67, released in 1957, there's a mention of a pyramid. Not one for soccer, but for baseball. It goes in a more abstract direction, describing not an amateur league, but the sandlot as the base, while the major and minor leagues as the apex. It's not fully one-to-one, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is the metaphor that would be later adapted and used for English football, probably trying to justify the inclusion of non-league promotion spots into the Football League. But we'll talk about that later. Even then, I don't think a pyramid is an accurate representation of what we're seeing in England, both past and present. What we're actually seeing is an abstract hodgepodge of groups connected only by a thin string of expectations and precedent, which actually sums up most stuff, to be honest, but I digress. As we'll see later, it can be added to, both at the base and at the top, and the shape it fully extends to is also just not a pyramid. It's more of a Thingamabob. As the decades moved onward, anybody outside of this structure who had potential to be elected was part of a regional league of sorts, typically one of a few. The Southern League is probably the most notable, as it hosted a lot of clubs from the London area, and was probably the closest the Football League had to proper competition. In fact, the only non-league team to win the FA Cup played in the Southern League. It was a small club that you've probably never heard of named Tottenham, or as my Southern American friends call it, Tottenham. The Spurs came marching in and whooped a team named Sheffield United in front of a huge crowd of 110,000 plus by a dominating score of 2-2, which forced them to replay a week later, and they won that 3-1 in front of an even more massive crowd of 20,000. The FA Cup had odd rules. I don't think they even got rid of this until a few years ago as well. And the cup ties they had in the tourney were not easy ones either. Their first round match was against elite Preston North End, whose empire was actually crumbling and they were relegated to the second division. The game went to a replay where Spurs won by 2 goals. They would go on to win their matches against Barry and Reading, and conquered the semi-final match against West Bromwich Albion. The Southern League's prominence is also why the third division was created. Honestly, it looks like the only strategy the Football League had when it came to competing was to just absorb the best teams and force the other leagues to fall apart and become feeders, which is not a new story, by the way. It's also interesting as the Football League is pretty much a monopoly when it comes to professional football in England. Now, I don't know if this legally counts as a monopoly, as there are technically other football leagues that exist and play independently of the league itself. Also, I don't know England's legal definitions for such, and I'm not going to for the sake of this. My point, though, is that when it came to professional football, there was no valid or competitive alternative, and so the only way you could really fight was to make smaller reforms. 1979. Non-league clubs from both the Southern League and the Northern Premier League formed a new group called the Alliance Premier League. This is an attempt to make easier potential candidates for election into the Football League proper, as now you can have the best non-league teams duke it out, and whoever wins has the best case for election. And it didn't work. For the first 7 years of the Alliance's existence, nobody was elected. Even once elite Preston North End, who had obviously seen better days, was re-elected over an Alliance club, probably because of favors or spite, I don't really know. Oddly enough, there were 2 teams who tied for the most re-elections during this period, Halifax Town and Crewe Alexandra. They were both re-elected 4 times in that 8-year period. You know, sooner or later you just gotta stop giving him chances, but whatever. It took an agreement to have automatic promotion and relegation in order for the Alliance clubs, now named the Football Conference, to join the 4th Division. But only 1 team was relegated per season, a stark contrast to the 4 that were up for election in years prior. Plus, there were other hiccups for non-league clubs that would stall their promotion run. The biggest one was stadium standards. In fact, 3 years in a row, from 1995 to 97, one stadium actually stopped clubs from gaining promotion. Also, in 1985, a new feeder league came into the picture, the Isthmian League, which mainly consisted of clubs in and around London. They too were granted a promotion spot into the Football Conference. Now, the Isthmian League is a story in and of itself, as it took South England's amateur pride and made it a whole thing. One of the odder aspects of the Isthmian League has to do with its name. What is the deal with naming your English amateur league after a land bridge in Corinth? Supposedly it was named after the Isthmian Games, one of the sporting competitions that took place the year before and after the Olympics in ancient Greece. And the Isthmian League was not the only Greek-named amateur league in England. There was the Athenian League, the Corinthian League, the Spartan League, and so on. And all of them upheld the rule of amateurism for a good while, until about the mid-70s. The Isthmian League started to allow professionalism, but they were still very headstrong, as they actually chose to not participate in the Alliance until 1985, when they were given that automatic promotion spot. And as far as the rest of the Thingamabob goes, the 3 main Alliance leagues took in teams from specific regional leagues through feeder agreements or just flat-out absorption. Over time, the FA makes the structure more uniform, creating a system of further regionalized leagues the deeper down the Thingamabob one goes. And this is how we get a direct pipeline to the Football League. It took about 100 years, but we got it. Now, there was an easy-to-understand route to join the best league in the world. Well, until then. The Premier League took form very much like how one pursues bankruptcy. Gradually, and then suddenly. During the 80s, there always seemed to be some form of Super League talk, not just in England, but the biggest factor that played into splitting was money, most specifically, broadcast money. The Football League had a revenue-sharing system that split broadcast money equally with all teams among the 4 divisions. There was also genuine untapped amounts of money to be made from cable television as well, and the FA, the league, and the clubs all wanted a bigger slice of the pie. The league, over time, did a lot to appease the more dominant clubs financially, most of them from big cities, by the way. They removed gate sharing requirements in 1983, and then gave First Division clubs 50% of the broadcast revenue when they threatened to leave in 1985, and then it went up to 75% a few years later. Almost as a last resort, well, to me at least, the Football League released a blueprint that pushed for unity among the clubs and called for a joint board to manage things. On paper, this doesn't sound too bad. But one of the statements was to put the league above all things first, which is a no-no if you are an overseeing governing body. The FA, the overseeing governing body of English football, saw this as a power grab, and in turn, they released their own report and allowed for the top clubs in the First Division to break away. Now, I think the FA was acting paranoid, but you gotta remember that the Football League exists because the FA gave them its blessing, and anything that messes with that overarching authority, even the optics of it, is going to be enough to start a war. The FA retaliated by giving their blessing to the breakaway clubs, which was all that was needed for the Premier League to be born. Now, at first the FA would govern the Premier League, and also have its name on it front and center. A big V to the Football League, reminding them who daddy is. But the clubs formed the Prem as a corporate entity, so the FA doesn't really have that much power, at least over their operations. What's really crazy about all of this is, from my research, the FA did not force the teams to create a new First Division with promotion and relegation. It was part of their blueprint, yes, and the Premier League ended up approving it. But I have a hard time finding anything that talks about it in grander detail. Yes, this was a very contentious thing, as the Football League had instilled itself as a treasured national institution. And this is funny to me, at least. there was some pushback by some of the clubs. In fact, one example was Sunderland chairman Bob Murray, who petitioned to actually exclude the Premier League by asking for no teams to be promoted from the Football League to it, and to take in no relegated teams from them. Now, I hate to be that guy, but that sounds like the stupidest way to respond. Like, the biggest and best clubs are already there, and they're gonna get all the money, because broadcasters want to show their games, not yours. This is not as good of an idea as you think it is. And the Premier League ultimately decided to keep that system in use, from my speculation, because once again, time to find statements. The FA wanted to still showcase its authority. A clean breakaway, like the form of a closed league, would have killed the Football League. And I don't think the FA wanted the Football League to die. I think the FA just wanted to have the Football League left in an Ellisonian form of torture. The Football League would be left a gelatinous blob of its former self, with no mouth, desiring to scream. And I'm pretty sure there are people that were thinking, no. People would be upset and the league would crumble. I have a hard time believing that, especially when Sky gave them £300 million to broadcast the first 5 years of the Prem. And you know that money was only going to keep going up and up because people were still going to watch. Not just in England, by the way. Sky's chairman at the time also was Rupert Murdoch. Americans know of him because he created one of the finest handcrafted idol factories out there, Fox News. And I'm going to try to be as honest as I can about this. Rupert Murdoch doesn't give a shit about Sunderland. Over time, the league attempted to rebrand, calling its top division the Championship, which is the saddest thing they could have called themselves, because no matter what, the damage was already done. The Prem, even with the graceful act of staying within the Thingamabob, took away the main reason why the Football League was formed. And now, all that's there is bits and pieces of Frankenstein's monster, a quote-unquote pyramid, meant to better set up a pathway into the Football League that is no longer the best in the world, not even the best in its own country, and never will be again. You might think the story ends here, and for the Football League it does, but for the Thingamabob, it doesn't. What you see here is actually not the football Thingamabob. Well, not all of it. Now this is the English football Thingamabob. Not 100% sadly, but I'll explain why. Every section is directly connected, and if you play your cards right, you can make your way to the top. Now, why am I not showing 100%? Well, it's simple. There are leagues that are not connected to anything, or are supposedly connected to the official tiers, but really shouldn't be. The Football Association will only take teams from 22 official feeder leagues, so in scope, these are the leagues you need to be in to even be considered for the race. And each one has their own pyramid, and is governed by their own county's football association. So how far up and down you go is based on them and how they set up their own thingamabobs. Mapping them out was the toughest part of this video. It took way too much time. And sadly what I got here is likely inaccurate. There are some that seem to be a bit more straightforward, looking at you, Yorkshire Amateur League, and your human Centipedabob, while some look like the spawn of Satan, like the Central Midlands League Beelzebub, or the Wiltshire Senior League's birthing triplets of Bob. You also notice a lot of jellyfish and Y-wing starfighters. And to be fair, a lot of these designs come from the lack of knowing who exactly goes where. For example, the Central Midlands League Beelzebub might be completely wrong concerning which teams get promoted and relegated where. But because I couldn't find who goes where, I am literally covering my Beelzebub by saying that one of these lines is the correct one, or that all of them are the correct one. I wish it were easier to understand. And you're probably just now about to write a comment that says, just go to their website, you idiot. Get the info there. That's what actually made this super difficult. I couldn't. Some websites just don't exist anymore, while others required me to get a VPN to access because they might be region locked or something. Even when I got that far, I was very likely to find nothing. All I could find were websites that looked like they never left the 90s, which I'm not complaining about. That was actually a treat. Now, I would say have a graph on your website that shows how your Thingamabob officially works and, we'll be good. Because in the end, I'm a bit old school, and I don't want to rely on Wikipedia for all of my research into this. I know, it's a lot to take in, but it could be worse. You could have a lot more leagues per tier. Take a look at Poland's Piłka Nożna Wyjazd. Here's what it looks like on Wikipedia, because I am not going to make a map out of this. The regional league split at the 5th tier to about 16 divisions, which isn't that bad. In the 6th tier, though, it splits to 43 divisions, which is not an even amount, mind you. And it doesn't stop there. It splits again to the 7th tier to 106 divisions. And it doesn't stop there. It splits again in the 8th tier to 168 parallel divisions. And it doesn't stop there. It splits again in the 9th tier to 59 divisions, which is kind of underwhelming. And finally, there are 4 divisions at the bottom of Poland's Wyjazd. Why? Just why? I mean, Poland isn't even that big. It's the size of... Mexico? Really? Hold on a second. Huh. You learn something new. Now, to be fair, I actually think England's more decentralized system works best. And plus, when all's said and done, the only leagues the FA is concerned with are the 22 that they declared its feeders. But what if we were to venture down this obscure rabbit hole and see who exactly is the worst team on this arbitrary Thingamabob? And how long would it potentially take them to go from worst to first division? At the very bottom are 2 leagues, Yorkshire Amateur League Division 7 and Devon and Exeter's 8th Division. These 2 leagues hold the very worst teams in all of English football, and they are mostly reserves and thirds. So most of these teams don't even hold the best of the worst, but like the second or third best. Now, to be serious, none of these clubs should be upset at their situation. They are geared up and playing competitive league football. Plus, who isn't to say that there has been good growth for these groups? Like, obviously the opportunity to have a third or even a junior team means something positive is happening, right? Plus, trying to find a first team amongst this pool is a bit of a challenge, as this is so far down the Thingamabob that some of these clubs only have a Facebook page that confirms their existence. Or at least confirms they existed once. But let's pick a team and give them the roller coaster ride of their dreams. How about this one? Calverley. As of this recording, they sit around mid-table. Stuck. But let's say, starting today, a miracle happens and they finish the league with the title. This means promotion, right? I think. I tried to access Yorkshire League's website to see if clubs this far down even move up, and it just leads to a white screen. They do have an awesome web name though, Yawful. But let's just say for the sake of convenience that they're granted automatic promotion without any hindrances. For now. And off they go from Division 7 to Division 6, then to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the Championship, and then the Premier Division, which they win! But they're not in the Thingamabob. How could they not be, you ask? They just won the Premier Division. And you would be correct. But they had not won the Supreme Division. Yorkshire got weird with the naming because I don't know how Supreme is bigger than Premier, unless you're eating at Taco Bell. But I digest. And so they win the Premier Division and also the Supreme. So now they're in the Thingamabob proper, right? No. Now, because they won the feeder league, they can apply to the Football Association and see if they are granted the chance. Now, remember, this is already a 10-year journey just to make it this far, and the odds of actually doing such a thing are near impossible. Plus, you're very likely working with new players each year. The heroes from last season are getting older and moving on, maybe moving up to get paid to play, as they were most likely not before. And once you get to this point, there are obviously some major financial decisions that have to be made just to even compete. As we'll see later, you can be like DJ Khaled and suffer from success. Oh, just got an update from the FA. And it's a no. Why? Well, the stadium is in bad shape and needs to be overhauled to meet the FA's requirements to be used in the leagues above. So who gets promoted? Well, the second place team had the same issue, as did the third, and the fourth. The fifth place team didn't, and the FA said, welcome aboard. Well, that sucks. So here we are, stuck. And it's not like the success on the pitch stops, because we have no hurdles to overcome there. This imagining allows for Calvary to have the best amateur players available to very likely guarantee them a win in their respective league, at least until later. This situation puts us in an odd place, where we're constantly winning Crunchwrap Supreme after Crunchwrap Supreme, but we just cannot leave the awful house. We just did a three-peat, and our stadium still sucks. But hold up, there's been a big change. The community has taken note of the success and is putting together a fundraiser to get the stadium to FA standards. One of the promo pieces gets wind of the BBC, and the story gets picked up. Content creators like Away Days, A Fully Bald Zealand, and Stumpeg make content about it, and it becomes a worldwide sensation. More than enough money comes in to fix the stadium, and also allows the team to turn semi-pro. And then we place second in the Supreme. Oh no, we're gonna have to wait another year. Hold on a second. Oh, message from the FA. They rejected the champions and gave us the green light. Cool. And off we go. Now entering the FA Thingamabob, with a proper chance to make it to the Premier League. Hopes are high, the community is buzzing, and the opening game is a sellout. And everybody sees us get obliterated 5-0. Oof. There's a massive shift in player quality when going from amateur to semi-pro. But we adjust, making some good signings and earning promotion. And another promotion. And thankfully another before our next hurdle. We are so close to playing in the National League, but we cannot advance any forward. It's just too difficult. We got the strongest attendance numbers amongst our group, as very few people watch football this far down. So here we are, stuck for a few years in the National League North. The money is beginning to dry up as fan enthusiasm is waning as well.
The team that won the North actually requested to be relegated. And I don't like saying this, but if things keep going the way they are, we're going to have to do the same.
Hold up. Club gets a call.
A millionaire wants to buy the team. And I just looked at the offer, and it's a number you don't turn down. And with that money, we're off to the races.
We easily win the North and go invincible in the National League. And after 22 years, we finally make it to League football. Money is still not an issue, and the income stream allows us to win League 2 and League 1. But the championship, the Silver Medal League, is a lot tougher than expected. There isn't much money coming in as far as revenue sharing goes. Well, to be fair, there never was. We gotta invest more money. The owner told me that he has pulled some strings, though, and got us some decent sponsorships and contracts with marketers who are going to make us the next Wrexham, who we just played to a 0-0 draw last Saturday. In fact, in this world, they still haven't even played Premier League football, by the way. And guess what? It works! The marketing brings in massive merchant ticket sales to where we can make a decent stab at promotion. But even with the extra money, it pales in comparison to what the other clubs have. And so it only allows the opportunity to earn promotion via a playoff, which we win! After 30 years, we are going to the Premier League! Hello, money! Which we have to spend quickly in order to stay in the league, and we don't. We actually had the worst season in Prem history. And we're back in the championship with only a bit of the money we got, plus the parachute payments that only help a little. Most of our signings are invoking their relegation clauses and are going to the top clubs for cheap. The owner takes advantage of the massive rise in club value and sells the team. New owner doesn't want to put any money in and thinks we could build our infrastructure and facilities and be a consistent mid-table team by relying on funds from the championship. Once he sees how little money there is with this, he cuts his losses and sells the team for a fraction of what he paid. The money we won dries up, the momentum dies, and the story ends with us never getting back. We keep getting relegated until we finally decide to fold up shop. This wouldn't have happened, but we had to submit an application asking to be relegated because our on-field performances have still been decent, but the finances are crap. The FA denies our relegation, so we have to fold. And yes, we got to the mountaintop, which would almost certainly be a first. Plus, our story would be forever etched in the history books as the reason why the pyramid exists. But in reality, we only showcase the illusion of merit. We fed the myth. Without the revenue streams, without the millionaire owners, we wouldn't be here. And the only way to make it up here is to have the money. Clubs like Luton Town, a club that was relegated out of the Football League, spent a few years in non-league, and made the climb back and played in the Premier League for a year, are great stories, but are massive outliers. They are the only non-league club to play in the Prem, unless Wrexham does. When you only have two clubs who can potentially boast such a claim, is this really a success story?
In fact, here's a note. Wikipedia, the greatest form of weaponized autism, states that 51 clubs have played in the Premier League since its inception. For First Division England overall, that number is 65. And out of that 120-plus year history, only 24 teams can say they were champions, while in the Premier League, only 7 can. 4 of those 7 were never relegated, and only one of them was never considered a win. Okay, so here is something that I had to change about the video late into post, so bear with me. Originally, I was planning on talking about how these pyramids are only good at determining the best team in their respective countries, and how it is not taken seriously by teams who constantly win it outright, as they have to put their focuses on much larger mountains like the Champions League or the potential Super League. Oftentimes, whenever I read discussions about promotion and relegation, there is some form of talk about this very thing. But I find it to be a non sequitur. Yes, the Champions League has done a lot to ruin domestic football, especially for smaller countries that have teams too big to lose and coast on the money to poach players and build their tiny house empires. But the video is a deconstruction of promotion-relegation, the feeder system that utilizes, and the laissez-faire form of domestic sport in England. UEFA has played a part in escalating the already inherent problems with this system, but so has the FA and the Football League and England itself. The constant push for feeder league expansion rather than making the first, second, and third divisions cast a wider net of opportunity within their own groups is one of the biggest reasons why we are seeing such prominent inequality for teams that get promoted up and relegated down. But we don't want to reward losers, I hear defenders say, which is something I pray they wouldn't say about someone on food stamps. But when you think about it, the automatic promotion also punishes the winners. Remember my example on Norwich, who went 4 straight years between the Prem and Division 2? I gotta ask, do you think the players were happy to go through that? Were the managers? The fans? Staff? You could say the owners would have been happy with the money they got out of it. The owners are human, who have egos like you and I do. I guarantee you they don't like being perceived as only good enough for the Silver Medal League. Earlier, I said that there have been only 7 teams that have won the Premier League. How many teams do you think are in England's football pyramid? This is not including the regional feeders. Only teams that have a direct line to the Prem. Do you know? I do. I counted. 1,872. 1,872 teams have the opportunity to compete in the Premier League someday and potentially win it all. Only 7 have actually won it. What do you think the percentage for that is? 0.37%. These teams have better odds at winning the lottery. So what is your solution then? Well, I don't have enough time in this video to fully explain what I think would be the best potential outcome, although I get the feeling it'll be a very controversial one. The problem is not that there are too many clubs in the system. It is that too few clubs are given the opportunity to benefit from it. and the reward of moving up on the basis of merit alone is not enough in my eyes. Lower leagues should exist and have repeating champions to develop club history and build audiences, because the game is for entertainment. If it weren't, crowds would not go and TV deals would be non-existent. This point seems to confuse most soccer fans I see online. The idea that the sport they love is just entertainment and the team they religiously follow is on par with the circus, with as many clowns, by the way, just doesn't seem to register. As a sports fan myself, I don't like to think that the college football team, the NFL team, the basketball team, or the soccer team I watch is more similar to the Jersey Shore than I feel comfortable with. It makes me realize that there is more to how the sausage is made than I want to believe. What I found through months of researching all this, what I came to conclude was that money is God. Now that itself is not a new story, but once you open the door for money to be made, and therefore bring in compensation for players, money will have to become your God. And if it isn't already, might as well close up shop. But what is interesting to me, outside of how the love of mammon created the football pyramid, is how it's not the only system it created. For that other system, we need to look outside of Europe and into the New World, the northern part of it.
Now, the idea of a closed league is nothing new. It stems from the world of America's greatest and biggest middle finger to England: baseball. The National League, very much like the Football League, started because of a lack of consistency in the previous system. The National Association of Professional Baseball Players, or the NAPBBP, was inarguably a shit show. Low entry fees allowed for unstable clubs to join, most of them in small cities that couldn't bring in fans for a baseball game. Therefore, the players were not typically getting paid well, or at all. Also, no revenue sharing doesn't help much either. And because of it, there was very little parity. So much so that near the end of the season, it was commonplace for teams to not travel and finish out the year. You would think the league would punish teams for doing this, but no. And then came the National League, or the National League of Professional Baseball Clubs, the NLPBBC. God, what is it with sports leagues and convoluted names? And things were good, except they weren't. One of the problems with their system was that teams would come in and then die. The severe financial instability did not change for any sport in the US for a long time, and probably the two eras we can point to that showed not just some form of financial stability, but also team profitability was in these two groups: the NHL's original 6 era and the NFL post-AFL merger. Every team from these specific points in time still exists today, and the leagues in particular have only experienced growth since then. One of the key factors for the NHL's stability during the original 6 era was that every club was in a major North American city, and when they expanded to 12 teams, the model of staying in big cities followed. The NFL, honestly, I doubt they were influenced by the NHL. I think they were actually more influenced by the then formed Major League Baseball. They followed a similar path to stability, pushing for teams in large cities with wealthy owners who can sustain them. Then Commissioner Pete Rozelle comes in and pushes for selling the league as a whole, rather than just specific teams. The pursuit of financial parity, alongside the systemic parity found in North American sports, is oftentimes called American socialism. This is oftentimes said in a mocking way, to make fun of how America does not provide popular social safety nets like universal health care and passenger rail to its people. I think you can argue that the Football League was, well, at one point, way more socialist than any American sports league, except for probably one. Let's talk about MLS. And it's not because of the draft. It's because out of all American sports leagues, it is intentionally built to be the most parity-driven. Don't believe me? Start a career with an MLS club and Football Manager. It'll confuse the hell out of you. You'll see some somewhat familiar things like a salary cap, player trades, and draft picks, but you'll also see things like general allocation money, senior minimum salary contracts, international slots, designated players under 22 initiative contracts. All of this is intentional and utilized to keep the league not just profitable, but sustainable, as the league itself holds the contracts with the players, not the teams. And technically, the teams don't exist. The only real entity that operates and exists is MLS. Every single team is merely a mirage. Think about that. And while the salary cap itself is very limiting, there are legal loopholes and tools that teams can use to build their rosters. One of them is general allocation money, or GAM. GAM is comparable to a Cracker Barrel gift card or US military aid. Amounts are given to each team to use for the league's internal transfer market, i.e. player trades, and to manipulate the salary cap to hire more players. That money technically does not leave the league, and it does technically show growth, as the league spent an estimated $500 million to its 876 players, with the overall average salary being around $575,000. Nearly all of the legal loopholes and systems implemented are done to make the league itself prosper and sustain long-term success. This is also a reason why you will never see promotion and relegation in MLS. Another reason is because US Soccer will not, at least systemically, for the time being, allow it. The United States Soccer Federation is our official governing body, and they have each division set up in a unique way. For professional soccer, there are 3 tiers to worry about. MLS is the only league in Tier 1, while Tier 2 is home to the United Soccer League's Championship Division. Tier 3 has MLS Next Pro, a reserve league for MLS, and the USL's League 1. Teams can be promoted per se, but they have to complete a strict list of financial and infrastructure requirements in order to be considered. One way to compare this is college football. University teams can go up and down the division system and are required to have certain financial, academic, and infrastructure needs met, alongside pay a fee to join. The leagues themselves also have to meet certain criteria as well, going through annual approvals. The further down the tiering, the less requirements. So let's say you are a club in USL League 1, and you win your league enough times that you want new competition and decide to apply for promotion. Let's also say that your club is based in a city that only has a population of 300,000. You sell out your stadium at 3,000 seats every game, which actually gives you some of the highest non-MLS attendance out there, and are one of the few non-MLS clubs that make a profit each year. More about that later. Plus, your majority owner's a millionaire, and with all this, you still wouldn't gain promotion. Let's start off with what hinders the English and the Americans: stadium size. Each tier has a different minimum requirement. Tier 3 has a 1,000 seat minimum, Tier 2 has a 5,000 seat minimum, and Tier 1 has a 15,000 seat minimum. So that's a no there already. But let's continue. You play in a city with a low population, and USSF requires 75% in clubs in Tier 2 to be based in a city with a population of 750,000 or higher, and because of it, the USL Championship sadly will not accept you. Finally, yes, the majority owner is a millionaire, but they don't have a high enough net worth. Oof. So with all that, no promotion. And this is why promotion and relegation is super weird to talk about in American soccer. There is no illusion of merit here, like in England or in Europe. It's bluntly finance-based, and outside of some special loophole or big reformations, it can't and won't exist. But it doesn't stop leagues from trying. I did find a loophole that can allow you to pursue promotion and relegation in American soccer. You have to have a league where all of your teams are in the same classified division and have it all done internally. With every team classified in the same system and being on equal footing, it allows for the ability for teams to move back and forth without fighting the requirements made by US Soccer. The United Premier Soccer League follows this system, having 2 internal divisions that move between each other. And this isn't a small group either. The league officially consists of around
900 amateur clubs and academies.
And from the sound of it, it seems to be working. Another example would be the American Premier Soccer League, which has a system that technically goes down to a hypothetical 9th tier. Once again, amateur league. So promotion and relegation are probably a lot less financially troubling, so moving up and down is closer to the quote-unquote merit-based system that is idealized in Europe. Now, sure, amateur soccer is not sanctioned by the USSF. They only do professional leagues, which is where the hurdles are. But even with all those crazy restrictions placed, there is one league that plans on bringing promotion and relegation to US professional soccer. The United Soccer League is a bit of an afterthought in the world of American sports. If you were to ask people about it, most would probably tell you they've never heard of it, which would be expected. But I forgot to mention that most of the people asked are soccer fans. Now in 2025, USL made the announcement to create a Tier 1 league. This, in and of itself, is nothing too crazy, but during the announcement, they also promised promotion and relegation. Now, we just went over US Soccer's requirements for teams to be promoted up the tier system, and here is USL promising something that sounds like it cannot actually happen. Outside of not seeking USSF classification or crazy structural change, and nothing so far is telling me either is happening. So what's really going on here? Teams are building up their stadium capacities to fit the requirements there, and I have no idea if any of the clubs will fit the monetary requirements to be promoted, but at least they're taking care of the pitch. USL is proposing a 2028 start, which sounds too good to be true. 2030 makes a little bit more sense to me, but I'm not a millionaire or affiliated with USL. One thing they have going for them, though, is that US Soccer has actually been very lenient on league requirements and will give you a pass if they see you're trying. It's obvious that they know the list of standards are strict. This was the case for the North American Soccer League, another Tier 2 league that had a lot of financial problems with it, most notably its backers being convicted of fraud, but that's another story. But US Soccer still kept giving them Tier 2 status. US Soccer was also lenient with USL as well, giving them multiple waivers to keep their Tier 2 status. Now, the NASL actually ended up suing US Soccer after being denied both a Tier 1 status in 2015 and a Tier 2 status in 2017, which they lost and are currently appealing. All this to say that there is a legitimate chance the USL might actually get both the Tier 1 league and the promotion and relegation, even with all the extra requirements, at the very least for a couple years. At the same time, I gotta ask, how is the USL gonna afford this? Their teams barely make any money as is. Former USL Championship team owner Andrew Vasiliadis, who ran the San Diego Loyal, estimated that over a 4-year period the club lost around $40 million. And in speaking with ESPN, he said, "I could have sold out every single game at our home venue, and I was still losing money because ticket sales is really the only avenue to success in the USL Championship." Plus, the article mentioned that sources are saying the USL is also losing money. And there is really no incentive for the clubs to build up the league either because they're not stakeholders, they just own the clubs. So while it is easy to look at teams being run poorly and blame them for their own demise, they also have literally no safety net. The USL, in my honest opinion, is far more like the early days of baseball than it is like the modern leagues under American socialism. Hell, you could say it is more comparable to the current state of the Football League. The only way you can stay afloat is by getting a truckload of cash flow. Outside of that, you ain't going anywhere. Sadly, the more and more I research this, the more and more I am believing that what they announced was a prayer in the dark. I am not confident that the USL can actually make this happen. With all that, I want to know, as American soccer fans, why do we want to be like Europe so much? Is it because we still think the game belongs to Europe and therefore we want to legitimize the sport by making it look as European as possible?
I say that because while the infrastructure is still in Europe and the best players are being developed in Europe, they're coming from all over the world and they play for a wide variety of different clubs who each have their own unique histories.
Here's an example. A while back, I got the opportunity to watch the Club World Cup. It was a game between Argentina powerhouse Boca Juniors and Auckland City, an amateur club amongst giants. Auckland City drew the game, and all 10 or so fans that were there to support them were so excited. What blew my mind is there was at least 10 to 15,000 Boca fans, and they made it a party. Constant blaring of the trumpets mixed with the banging of cymbals and bass drums was so cool. Plus everyone was just singing along, having fun. Funny story, there was a lightning delay, so the fans had to head to the lower deck, and Boca fans were all gathered like sardines, and we're still singing and dancing. One of the fans was also on the support beam just above the stairs to the upper deck, and he was leading chants. It was great. Experiencing that motivated me to go to more games. I had only been to one previous Nashville SC game before, and back when they were still playing at the Coliseum in USL. I made a decision to come back to Geodis and watch NSC play. Looked at the schedule out of the blue. Nashville was in the semi-final for the US Open Cup, playing against Philadelphia. Tickets were cheap, and I went. And I had so much fun. And they won! So then came the opportunity to see the final, which NSC had a watch party at Geodis. Free parking too. I ain't turning that down. So I went, had fun, and watched them win. Also went to the celebration, got a picture with the cup, and then the season was finished, and I started keeping track of them more. February came, and I wanted to see a game from the supporters' perspective.
We have the new march tonight. One rule: try as hard as you possibly can. Do not leave on the road.
And alongside the supporter groups there, I walked with them to the stadium, chanting and recording the experience. And I got to watch the game 3 rows behind net. There is something surreal about watching smoke flares go off while you can see but barely hear the pop of fireworks because the people around you are so loud. I get the feeling that for people who are neurodivergent, it would be an overstimulating experience. I'm not on the spectrum in any way, but that was overstimulating. And yet it was beautiful. And I've seen a lot sports-wise. I watched Halliburton perform miracle after miracle. I watched CM Punk's return to wrestling. I reveled in every single minute of Indiana beating the living shit out of Alabama, and then watched in awe as Fernando Mendoza reminded us of why he won the Heisman. Yet this was different. Those were on television. This was live. And being so small amongst a group of people who were just as happy as you were, for at least that moment, all of us bobbed up and down like waves in the ocean.
Ladies and gentlemen, this program is brought to you by Pepsi.
I also want to say that I'm not against the USL or any of its clubs. Just recently I went to watch the Chattanooga Red Wolves play Fort Wayne FC, an expansion team playing its first year professionally. Being originally from the Fort Wayne area, I wanted to go. Both of these teams play in USL League 1, their lowest professional group. The stadium Chattanooga plays in is a small one, currently seating about a couple thousand people, with the opportunity to expand to about 5,000 or so seats. And the stadium itself is nice for the size, although the parking lot is an underdeveloped pile of gravel. Now, there is also another Chattanooga team that currently plays MLS Next Pro. Who has been there longer, and the two clubs don't get along. They've only played each other once, though.
Score near the end of regulation. Tempers flared a bit. A couple of yellow cards came out. Owen Green sends the Red Wolves into pandemonium. That goal made the Red Wolves a 5-4 winner on PKs. Red Wolves really wanted to celebrate by planting the flag at midfield, but the CFC weren't having any of that. Nonetheless, the Red Wolves were pumped to win this one.
It's red. Chattanooga red, baby. Come on. Chattanooga's red, baby. It's red. Chattanooga is what? Chattanooga is what? Chattanooga is red.
To be honest, what the game needs is not a pyramid from Europe. What it really needs is a genuine campaign to create local teams that help build up our communities. There are beautiful stories about teams like Detroit City, Portland Hearts of Pine, Sacramento, Vermont Green, but these clubs don't need Division I status to prove themselves. They also built their fan base without promotion and relegation. Even if it was there, I don't know if the story would be any different. Like promotion and relegation in the eyes of a lot of American soccer fans is like seen as this panacea. It is the cure-all. But it's not. All of this to say is that there's something beautiful growing here. And we don't need to be like you. We can do ours. And flourish too. Sure, by all means, learn from everybody. Take and give. And if there are those who want to follow Europe likewise, by all means, go ahead. Prove us wrong. Prove people wrong. And I'm not even saying a closed league is better. I love the stories about Luton Town and Leicester City. And yes, these are outliers, playing in a system that will never make their situation more common. But even if we were to make everything super fair, only one team gets to call themselves champion. And everyone wants to see their team win. Should we not try to make this more fair? Give everyone a better chance? Plus, I hope that if anything, you understand that I think that soccer is inherently a beautiful game. Even in the small bits I've seen it. And we are seeing it flourish in America. It's become the third most popular sport, surpassing our middle finger to British colonialism. Baseball. Why? I think it's because of a similar answer for why cricket is popular in India. It's not a colonial game anymore. It's theirs. While the money is still in Europe, the game isn't. And America is a beautiful melting pot of communities of people from all over the world trying to do the exact same thing together. Flourish. And our neighbors, who we are called to love, want to share something beautiful with us. And through that act of love, the game becomes a part of us. All of us. Earlier in the video, I made mention of something called American socialism. I don't know when it was coined, but it is often used to describe the hypocrisy of the United States. Here is a worldwide superpower that doesn't have free healthcare, bike lanes, and social safety nets for people, but yet pulls out all the stops for their sports teams. It is usually brought up to compare it to the capitalist system that Europe utilizes in their sports. While I did bring up how there's a lot within England's football league that was very egalitarian and probably more socialist than any league currently in America, I find it interesting that this idea is super prominent, especially in online circles. It deeply coincides with the discussions around healthcare and safety nets because the groups talking about it are either A, the sufferers of such disenfranchisement, or people from nations that have these benefits, and wonder why the Americans are too stupid to not have it. But if we were to dig deeper into the closed league system that supposedly promotes this form of socialism, I think we would find something very different. But that's not for today. That's for the next video.
This is